What's Mr. Curry up to?
I don't know. What's that machine anyways?
Some kind of old movie projector. Looks like 8mm.
Don't tell me we're gonna watch a film. Oh, brother, do you think he's even heard about videos yet?
Mr. Malone, of course I'm well aware of videos. It just happens that this film I have for us today covers a specific material we're all about to study. As you appear to know so much about teaching, perhaps you'd like to share with the rest of us what you already know so much about, the scientific method.
The scientific method. Let's see. When scientists want to make something like Frankenstein's monster or something, well, they have a special way of doing it called the scientific method. You know, the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone's connected to your shin bone, and your shin bone's connected to your knee bone.
Very amusing, Mr. Malone. Perhaps you can share the rest of your anecdote with me after class. For now, I want everybody to pay careful attention to this little film. The scientific method. The scientific method is a problem-solving tool used by scientists to determine the validity of hypotheses. Simply put, it is a series of steps by which scientists test whether a scientific question is valid or invalid. In this film, we will show you how you can use the scientific method as a problem-solving tool and the correct steps you need to follow when using the scientific method.
Is that Mr. Curry?
I don't know. It sure looks like him, but with a lot more hair.
As we have seen, the scientific method is simply an organized process for finding a solution to a question. It is basic problem solving.
I didn't know he was an actor.
You call that acting?
Mr. Malone, pay attention and take careful notes. There will be a test on this. There are 8 steps that should be followed when using the scientific method. The first step is to state the problem in the form of a question. After stating the problem as a question, the next step is to research the problem. Based upon your research, you will then form a hypothesis for step 3. Form a hypothesis.
Hippopotamus? Is that what he said? Form a hippopotamus?
No, a hypothesis. A hypothesis is an educated guess about a possible solution or answer to your problem or question.
Are you getting all this?
I'm trying to, but it's a little weird the way the guy in the film is acting.
I still say it's a stretch to call that acting.
Perhaps now we can continue. After forming the hypothesis, step 4 is to write down the procedures that you will use to test your experiment. And based upon your procedures, you will perform your experiment to test your hypothesis in step 5. Are you sure you're getting all this? How about you, Mr. Malone?
What? Who? Me?
Yes, you. Of course you. Are you getting all this?
Yeah, I'm writing it all down. See? Step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I got it.
Me too.
Yeah, I got it all. This is too weird.
Good. Let's continue. Just 3 more steps. While conducting your experiment, you will observe and record all of your results in step 6. Your results will also be used in step 7 when you interpret your data. And finally, the last step, step 8, is to state your conclusion about the problem based upon the research you did and the data you collected. I believe that the scientific method is one of the most important things I'll teach you all year. And if it takes getting a little scare into you to get you interested, well, then so be it. You do like scary movies, don't you?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, scary movies are awesome.
Yeah, scary movies and the scientific method? Sounds great.
Well, Mr. Malone, perhaps you've come up with the perfect assignment for yourself and your group. Why don't you all take some time to work together using the information you already have and your textbooks to discover how the scientific method can be used to investigate scary movies. I have a feeling you'll do just fine. You just have to start thinking like scientists. Now, you guys start working on it together. I've got to get back to the lab.
Is he kidding? This is way too complicated. Why do we even need to know this stuff anyway?
Well, it says here that the scientific method is used every day by scientists all around the world. And without it, technology just wouldn't get any better.
But I'm not a scientist. I want to be an actress after I graduate.
You heard Mr. Curry. For this project, we all have to be scientists whether we like it or not.
Yeah. All we have to do is think like scientists and figure out how a scientist would look at a scary movie.
Think like a scientist. I wouldn't even know where to start.
At the beginning, of course. What did Mr. Curry's movie say was the first step to the scientific method?
Oh, wait, I know that. I was scribbling notes like crazy. The first step is to state the problem, right?
So what is a problem associated with scary movies?
Well, there are always people running and screaming. Oh, and they're always running in the wrong direction. Instead of running away from danger, they're always running into it. I never could understand that. And you know...
No, not that kind of problem.
Well, what do you mean? The only other problem I can think of is that scary movies almost always give me a heart attack.
Exactly.
What? You mean the problem could be that scary movies always give me a heart attack?
Well, sort of. Well, don't you see, that's the way a scientist would look at it. They would ask, what do scary movies do to us physically?
What do they do? Well, they usually make my heart start beating really fast because I get so scared. Oh, I get it. You mean the problem could be that scary movies increase the heart rate of the viewers, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. But remember, when you identify a problem, you need to state that problem in the form of a question.
So, the first step is to state the problem in the form of a question. In this case, it would be, what happens to a person's heart rate when he or she watches a scary movie? Right?
Works for me. Did you do that?
Me? I've been sitting right here.
It must be Mr. Curry, up to his old tricks.
But Mr. Curry isn't even in the room.
When applying the scientific method, it is very important that you begin with a solid problem or question. Without one, your project won't go very far. For example, the question, do scary movies frighten people, is not specific enough. It would be very difficult to prove it true or false without solid, measurable data to examine.
So now what?
Well, the number of heartbeats can be examined, measured, and analyzed, so I guess we're on the right track. The textbook also says that it's important to choose a problem you do not know the answer to and a problem that you can work with.
I'm talking about the projector. What are we going to do with a projector that turns off and on by itself?
Oh, that. I think it's better if we just stick to the assignment and try not to think about the projector.
I think I'm with David.
Yeah, Jill, some of these things are a little too weird to worry about.
Let's look at the problem we chose. What happens to a person's heart rate when he or she watches a scary movie? Jill, is this a question we definitely know the answer to?
Yeah, I think so.
You do, without a doubt.
Well, it was a guess, I guess.
Good, in that case we're okay. The book says choose something that you do not know the answer to.
The movie guy said we should choose a problem or a question that we can work with. Are we going to find information about scary movies and heartbeats?
Sure.
Yeah!
Great, well that takes care of step one. Only 7 more to go. Oh well, this is kind of fun. And at least this thing isn't rolling by itself again. Uh-oh, spoke too soon.
Research is a critical part of any science project or experiment. Your research can either make or break your project. If you gather enough information to support your problem, your project could be a winner. But if you don't gather enough information, your project could be, well, let's just say you probably won't get the grade you want. So, when you're doing your research, remember to use a wide variety of resources outside of your school library.
Research the problem? How are we supposed to do that?
Well, what are some things we should know before we begin our scary movie experiment?
Well, we need to pick out some scary movies to watch. Let's go to the video store and watch them over at my place. I'll call my mom to make sure it's okay. I mean, it's homework after all.
Hold on there, Mike. This isn't about a particular movie. We have other more important things to figure out, like how are we supposed to know if a person's heart rate increases if we don't know what a normal heart rate is supposed to be?
Yeah, I guess you got a point. So what do we do?
Looks like we'll have some research to do. We can hit the library and find some books on human body systems.
We can also check the library indexes, newspapers, magazines, check out a science video.
And don't forget the World Wide Web.
Mr. Curry, where did you come from?
From the door, of course. What, you think I'd come in through the window or something?
Mr. Curry, I think we came up with a way to use the scientific method to test scary movies.
Terrific.
We thought that our step 1 question could be, what happens to a person's heart rate when he or she watches a scary movie?
Very good. Now that's a question that can be examined, measured, and analyzed. I assume you don't know the answer to that question.
But in a way, we kind of do. I mean, can't we assume that because it feels like our heart is beating more after a scary movie, that it's beating faster?
Not until you've examined it using the scientific method. You can't be sure that other variables didn't affect the outcomes until you test them.
Now you're talking too much like a scientist. What do you mean by variables and outcomes?
Well, let me grab my bag of tricks, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to show you a bunch of objects, and I want you to tell me what you think is going to happen when I drop them. Like this, for example. What do you think will happen if I drop this?
Are you serious?
Yes, of course. What will happen if I drop it?
It will fall.
So your hypothesis is, if I drop the ball, then it will fall. So far, so good. What if I drop the ball from here?
It will still fall.
So you say even if I change the variable of height, the ball will still fall.
Yeah.
Very good. Did the variable of height change anything?
It bounced more.
Oh, more height and more bounce. Now this could change our hypothesis. If a ball is dropped from increasingly greater heights, then it will bounce more. Now, what if I drop a different ball? What do you suppose would happen if I drop this ball?
It would fall.
Well, let's see. It did fall, but it didn't bounce. Another different variable, another different result. But still, when I drop things, they fall, right?
Yeah.
And what about if I drop these? What's going to happen? Wow, it's looking like everything that I drop falls to the ground. What about if I drop this? What's going to happen?
Then it falls.
It'll fall, right? Huh. Let me try that again. What's going to happen if I drop this?
Then it floats.
That other balloon was a helium balloon.
Aha! A new variable. Looks like we're going to have to do some research. We cannot just assume that the ball will fall. Our hypothesis has to be based on some research. If I had given you the balloon to check before I had let it drop, you would have noticed the variable of helium and changed your assumptions. This is why scientists rely so heavily on the scientific method. There are so many variables to consider, and any one of them can affect the results of your experiment. You may think that scary movies cause your heart to beat faster, but until you do some research, set up a controlled experiment, and record your results, you can't know for sure.
So you expect us to test the whole thing?
It could be worth some serious extra credit points. Besides, I'm not sure anything like this has ever really been done before. It could become a landmark experiment that other scientists draw from in the future.
Really?
Well, that is one of the main points of using the scientific method. By detailing the entire experiment and recording all the variables analyzed, scientists are able to track the validity of the hypothesis. Some of the most exciting discoveries are those that prove other hypotheses wrong. It's like the helium balloon. All of a sudden, everything has changed. From gravity makes everything fall, we move to gravity makes things that are heavier than air fall. Who knows? One day we may find a new variable that changes everything again.
So our experiment could lead to a new scientific discovery.
It's possible if you follow the method and carefully note your variables and results.
Cool.
You guys have a good weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
Let's get together in the library after school today, you guys, and figure out how to do this.
Probably the most difficult step of the scientific method is developing a good, solid hypothesis. The hypothesis is the center of your project. Chances are, if your hypothesis doesn't make sense, your whole project won't make sense. So when you form your hypothesis, use words like if and then. Stick with a simple statement and make it precise and measurable.
look at all the information that I got.
Cool. Looks like you did pretty well.
I found some really cool stuff on the internet about heart rates and exercise.
I found a magazine article on psychological testing. It has all this stuff on test groups, kind of like the variables thing that Mr. Curry was talking about.
I called my doctor, Dr. Stevens, and he told me that the normal heart rate for a person at rest is about 70 beats per minute.
Cool. I didn't know that. Let's see. 1, 2.
You know, I'm sure our heart beats faster when we're scared, just like it beats faster when we've been exercising. Like me, I've been running around finding things, and I bet that my heart is beating a mile a minute.
You just said the magic word.
What?
Bet. A bet is nothing more than a hypothesis.
Are you sure you don't mean hippopotamus?
Yes, I'm sure.
Now remember, a hypothesis is an educated guess about the possible solution or answer to the problem.
So our problem is, what happens to a person when he or she watches a scary movie? So our hypothesis could be, if a person watches a scary movie, he or she could have a heart attack.
No, let's not get that extreme, but in a sense, you're on the right track. Let's get back to the problem. How does watching scary movies affect a person's heart rate? Now, how can we turn that question into a statement that answers the question?
Maybe the hypothesis could be, if a person watches a scary movie, his or her heart rate will increase.
The textbook says it's important to be precise.
Precise? What do you mean?
You said earlier that your doctor told you that a normal heart beats 70 times per minute. We can use this as our baseline measurement, something to measure our variables against.
I think I've got the hypothesis. How's this? If a person's normal resting heartbeat is approximately 70 beats per minute, then the heartbeat will increase above that level when a person watches a scary movie.
By Jove, I think she's got it.
Extra credit, here we come.
Okay, so now we have our hypothesis. We're getting close to the really cool part. Now all we have to do is write down the procedures for testing our hypothesis.
You really ought to be in movies, you know. You're always so dramatic.
Did you hear what I said? We have to write down our procedures.
I know. Step forward to the scientific method. No big deal. It's not like we have to write a 10-page essay or anything. And in fact, I got an idea that will help solve everything.
You do?
Yeah, I do. And if you can get some of your friends from the cheerleading squad and some of the guys from the football team to help us out tomorrow after the game, I'll be glad to write out all the procedures.
Well, sure we can get some people to help out, but what for?
You'll see. Just bring them to the lab tomorrow. I'm going to okay it with Mr. Curry. Man, I can smell the extra credit.
So, you've developed a solid hypothesis, and you think you're ready to do your experiment. Before you just jump in, remember that you have to write out the procedures for your experiment before you actually do it. That way, you'll know what materials you need, and you can make sure that your experiment fits the hypothesis that you're testing. You'll save yourself a lot of time and keep organized during the whole process. Writing down your procedures is important because other people can use them to repeat your experiment. It also helps your teacher better understand how you did your experiment. So remember, writing your procedures will help you gather the necessary materials, make sure that your experiment fits the hypothesis that you're testing, and it will help others who want to repeat your experiment.
Hey Mike, what's up? What is all this?
Well, I follow some stuff I read in that magazine article, and I've set up some testing stations for our experiment.
Hey guys, the game's over and I have some people stopping by to help us test our hypothesis. Is everything ready?
Did you write down the procedures like you promised, Mike?
I did. It's all set.
Hey, is this where we're supposed to be for the experiment?
Oh, yes it is. Come on in. So, how's this gonna work? David, put this on so I can show everyone. It's very simple. All we do is sit people down and make sure they're relaxed. Relax, David.
I'm trying.
Okay, 3 of you will go with Jill and Tracy. You'll be the experimental group.
I don't think I like the sound of that.
Don't worry, it's all part of the project. First, we'll record all your heart rates at rest. Then, the experimental group will watch a few scenes from the scary movies that I picked out.
All right, we could watch some scary movies. I love scary movies.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay, I think I'm relaxed now. This thing isn't too bad after all.
See, you're measuring at 70 beats a minute.
I'll try that thing.
Okay, guys, please attach your heart rate monitors and watch the video. As you can see, experiments can be a lot of fun. The written procedures we are following help us make things flow smoothly, which is exactly why rule number 1 for testing a hypothesis is to always follow the written procedures. Based upon these written procedures, we will form a control group and an experimental group. A control group gives us a basis for comparing the experimental group. In a control group, there are no variables being tested.
Variables? What are variables?
Variables are the factors that are being tested in this experiment. It is critical that everything in the experiment is the same each time it is tested, except for the one variable you are testing. This is where the experimental group will come into play.
Are we the experimental group?
The experimental group is the group that is being tested by changing one variable at a time. In this experiment, we have two groups of students. The first group has been given a number 1. You are the control group. In this group, no variables are being tested, and as you can see, these students are not watching any movies and are just sitting quietly. But if you look at the second group of students, you will notice that they are watching a scary movie, and the activity of this group is much different than that of the control group. This is the experimental group.
So let me get this straight. We are the control group, and we're the group that doesn't have any variables. And they are the experimental group, and they're the group that the variables are being tested on? Is that right?
Very good.
But wait, what is the variable in this experiment?
Well, in this case, it would be the scary movies. Since we are trying to prove that scary movies increase a person's heart rate, we will have to use different movies in the experiment to prove this to be true.
So, how do you think it's going so far?
Really good. During the first scary movie that I showed the experimental group, everyone's heart rates increased.
Good, but what movie are we showing now?
Well, now I'm showing a pretty boring movie.
There are many, many trees in the forest, and we will now list all of them.
And as you can see, the heart rates have gone way down and everyone is almost asleep.
That's perfect. That can help us show that our hypothesis is true. We're almost done.
Yeah, a few more movies and we'll have all the data that we need. Then we'll be finished.
Great. We're in the home stretch now.
Here are some handy hints when performing your experiment. Always observe and record the data. Watch your experiment closely and note any reactions that occur. Always keep your results together in one journal. This will make it a lot easier to keep your information organized. And remember, when dealing with the data from your experiment, be honest. Don't make up results from your experiment that you didn't get. Don't make your data fit your hypothesis. If your data doesn't prove your hypothesis to be true, then simply state that in your conclusion. Always be ethical and honest. And who knows, by being honest in your experiment, you may make a new scientific discovery. Just think, you could be the next Albert Einstein or Isaac Newton. So remember, when you're observing and recording the data from your experiment, make sure to watch your experiment closely and note any reactions that occur. Keep all your results in one journal, and be honest.
Hey, this scientific method is cool.
Yeah, we need to talk to Mr. Curry about doing something like this in our class.
Well, everybody, that concludes our research.
Thanks for helping us out with our experiment. You guys were great. I think we got all the information we need.
This experiment was a lot of fun, but now comes the yucky part.
The yucky part? What's that?
Well, we have to figure out what to do with all the data that we just got.
Well, actually, since we did a good job recording the data, interpreting it will be a breeze.
Interpreting it? Oh no, this is already sounding hard.
Oh, it's not that bad. Let's take a look at the results. The first thing we need to do is organize results on graphs, charts, and tables.
Graphs, charts, and tables? I know you don't mean the four-legged kind.
Definitely not. By using graphs, charts, and tables, we can show results from the experiment. This will make it easier for our audience to understand the results, and for us to write the summary.
Okay, so I can make some graphs, charts, and tables to organize the data, but then we're supposed to write what?
We have to write a summary. All we have to do in the summary is write about what we discovered from the results of our experiment.
Do you mean that everyone fell asleep during the boring movies, but that everyone was screaming their heads off during the scary ones?
Not quite. I mean, what happened to their heart rates when they watched the movies?
Oh, well, during the scary movies, their heart rates all increased, and during the boring movies, their heart rates didn't increase. In fact, their heart rates were almost the same as when we measured them at rest, before we began the experiment.
Great. I'll put all that down in the summary.
Yeah, I get it now. This is going to be so cool.
Oh, and guess what I did? I took pictures of the experiment.
Good job.
Great, Tracy.
Yeah, good job. These pictures would be great. Good drawings or pictures that show your results or procedures can definitely make a project better.
Do you really think so?
Yeah. Sometimes drawings and pictures can explain things better than words. Let's all take this home and finish it up for class on Monday.
Interpreting data can sometimes be a difficult task. That's why pictures, drawings, graphs, charts, and tables of your results and procedures are an asset to your project. Not only will they enhance your project, they can also help clarify your written summary. And remember, your written summary does not have to be complicated. Your written summary should be just that, a summary of your procedures, results, and of course, your discoveries. It will make it easier for you to write your conclusion in step 8. So remember, when you're interpreting the data from your experiment, make sure to make tables, charts and graphs, draw pictures, or take photographs to show your procedures and results. And write a summary.
Wow, Tracy, that table looks great.
Thanks. You know, you were right. This table was easy to make, and it really helped me organize the results.
Good. I wrote up the summary. Now we can just add it to the rest of the project.
Did we state a conclusion yet?
Conclusion? I thought the summary was the conclusion.
Not quite. Our summary does what it's supposed to do. It summarizes the procedures, the results, and discoveries.
Yeah, but what are we supposed to say in the conclusion? Like, in conclusion, scary movies freak people out?
No, not quite. All we have to do in our conclusion is state if the results support our hypothesis.
So we have to decide based on our results if our hypothesis is true or false?
Exactly. Let's reread our hypothesis and look at our results. Then we can determine if the results of our summary support our hypothesis.
Well, the hypothesis is, if a person's normal resting heartbeat is approximately 70 beats per minute, then the heartbeat will increase above that level when a person watches a scary movie.
Now, let's look at our results and see what conclusions we can draw.
Well, in each case, the heart rate increased while the subjects were watching the scary movies.
You know what that means.
The hypothesis is true. Mike, Tracy, can you believe it? The hypothesis is true.
All right. That wasn't so bad. Now all we have to do is write the conclusion out.
Cool, let's do it.
Stating a conclusion doesn't have to be hard. In fact, your conclusion should just describe what your data tells you about your hypothesis. If the data supports your hypothesis, state it clearly. If it does not support it, decide how you might change your hypothesis based on your results, or what you might do to experiment further. Whether your hypothesis is proven to be false or true, remember, the purpose of your conclusion is to communicate your results with others. To do this effectively, make sure to answer questions in your conclusion like, what happened? Was it what you expected? Did your results agree with the hypothesis? Did it answer the original question? By answering these questions in your conclusion, you will clearly communicate your discoveries with your audience.
This is really good.
Oh my gosh! Guess what, you guys?
What?
I think we're finished.
Yes!
Wow.
All right.
Right on.
Now that's what I like to see. Students excited about science class.
We did it, Mr. Curry. We finished the assignment.
You guys are great.
Thanks, Mr. Curry. Actually, it was a lot of fun.
And better yet, the experiment worked.
Yes, you definitely used the scientific method to prove your hypothesis. I'm really impressed, guys. So, do you think this will help you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Remember, the scientific method is simply a problem-solving tool you can use to help yourself in science class and everyday life.
So, Mr. Curry, are you going to tell us how you did that little trick with the projector?
What trick?
You know, turning the projector off and on by itself?
I didn't do any trick with the projector.
You're telling us you did not just turn that on.
It's exactly what I'm telling you. Pretty scary, huh? So long, everyone. Well, My work is done here. Great work, buddy. We did it
Ha Spooky.
Let's do this. Oh. Hit it!
Now, what if I use a different ball? What do you suppose would happen if I drop this ball? Okay. It'll fall. It'll bounce.
You'll see. Just bring them to the lab tomorrow. Well, I set up some testing stations. Oh, well, that ain't right.
No.
What are you doing?
Jeez, come on.
We are number one.
I lost
We're
myself.
looking at the camera. Okay.
Hypothesis like an educated guess is your best bet. It's what you get when you make a mistake and use an if and then. Something you use again and again. Well, let's see.
Heartbeats in scary movies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that takes care of only step one.
What was funny?
I said yeah. I was
It
supposed to say
doesn't matter
okay.
as long as we say something.